Hello and welcome to another episode of ResourceFULL. My name is Tom Manners. On Twitter, I'm at Manomatics, and all my ResourceFULL videos and my videos of pedagogy for maths and all sorts are on my website, tommanners.co.uk. Now, a lot of this journey for me, and the reason I'm confident enough maybe to share some of this, is because of my involvement with the organisation and the website we're going to be talking about today. Now, hopefully we're going to fit it into an hour, but I've got two guests who've got so much information that we're going to have to squeeze it, but we're going to keep it short. We're going to keep it to that hour because this website is free, and this whole series of interviews is all about those websites that people are sharing for free, the great resources that help you in your classrooms. But today, I think we're also going to be talking about how we can be helping departments and developing departments. Because the website we're going to be focusing on is the nctm.org.uk, and I'm very lucky to be joined by Carol, who is one of the leaders of secondary maths in NCTM, and our Pete Griffin as well. So I close my screen, and to you guys I say, come on down! Dun, 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 dun.
Morning, Tom.
Good morning.
Morning, Tom.
Good morning. Thank you for agreeing to do this. I
much prefer your picture, Carol, than mine.
Are you making any kind of reference to the fact that you have darker hair, or is it the fact you have more hair?
I look very grainy. I just thought.
Well, I went on your Twitter handles. I mean, if you want to update it, I mean, in fairness, my photo's a year and a half old, and on mine, you're right. I should be updating that.
I really just look like this. Okay, so that's fine.
No, thank you both for doing this. Now, I've met you through the my learning journey through the NCTM. And it's at this stage, I am not an employee of the NCTM, and I approached you guys to see if you'd be willing to get involved with this, because I know there's a new website and there's so many resources, and as I pointed out, they're free. And I still find it somewhat shocking when people haven't heard of what's going on through the NCTM and the maths hubs across the country. So we'll get to some of that shortly, but we have to introduce yourselves first. So ladies first, Carol, who are you? Where do you come from? And give us a bit of your journey.
So I'm Carol Knight. I'm the secondary director at NCTM. I worked in the classroom as a teacher for 15 or 16 years. I then worked at the University of Chichester for a while, and before moving to MEI, so Maths in Education and Industry. And I've worked for MEI for the last 8 or 9 years now. And the last 3, 4, 5 years I've been working on the NCTM. It's a government contract project, I suppose, that we work on. So that's who I am. And when I say that I've worked in the classroom for 15 or 16 years, and I'm a bit sort of bit wobbly on that, is because I actually, when I was working at the University of Chichester, I really missed the classroom, and I wanted to go back, and so I went sort of part-time working in the university and part-time in the classroom, because I just missed that sort of contact with children.
The only thing I think about when I think of University of Chichester is Bognor Reid Butlins is over the road, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I never actually got across to Butlins, but yes, it is
ridiculous.
On the site.
I was there this summer, I'm there next summer, but I'm a holiday park kind of guy. I've always had to work there, but that's by the by. Pete, let's hear about your journey.
I'm Pete Griffin. I'm Assistant Director of Secondary NCTM. I've been with NCTM since it started, like, I don't know, what is it, 12, 13, 14 years ago. Originally, I was a teacher, taught in Hertfordshire and in London. And then I did quite a couple of big stints as a local authority maths advisor. So I was maths advisor in Hertfordshire and then a maths advisor in Devon. Partway through being an advisory teacher originally. I mean, I am old. Advisory teacher in Hertfordshire when the Cockcroft report came out. Partway through that, I took a secondment and worked at the OU for a bit. So I had the delight of working with John Mason and his team at the OU, Centre for Maths Education, where we wrote some professional development materials. Then I moved to Devon, and then I joined NCTM later.
And so I referenced earlier that some people still don't know what the NCTM are all about. So should we introduce them? What are its aims? What has all this money gone into? And yeah, I probably said it best. What are its aims? What are you intending to do with it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know where you would put the emphasis, Carol, but my emphasis would be a couple of things. We want to help teachers to continue to develop. Continuing to develop is a big theme for me. People don't develop, bang, done it. It's continual. It's lifelong. You do it all the time. That's what part of being a teacher is, and we want to help teachers to do that. What you'll see in the kind of aims on the website is about PD, and we're very strong on that, what actually professional development is, and everybody should have it. It's not just courses. In fact, sometimes it's not courses at all. It's how you develop professionally. So as we get into some of the resources, and you flagged it up, didn't you, Tom, that we want to give people some stuff that helps them do things together as a department, as a group of teachers, whatever, and thinks about stuff and plans stuff together and whatever. So we've got some resources, we have got resources, but resources on their own aren't enough. I mean, I quite like your title, Tom, ResourceFULL. We want to turn teachers from just having, I've got loads of resources, but you've got to keep giving me more. For me to do, you've got to keep giving me more. Well, that's no good. We want to make teachers resourceful.
And that's where the series is about, actually, because you could tell people about Freya model, and you can tell people about Open Middle, all these different websites featured so far. If you don't know how to use them, well, it's about workman blaming his tools. It's about the way you use the tools. So that professional development. Carol, is there anything that Pete's missed?
I think that when we talk about resources, sometimes there's a distinction between sort of classroom resources and professional development resources. And I think we try to sort of bridge that a little bit by we're offering things that are things that you can use in the classroom. They're accompanied by professional development sort of wraparound as well. So I think because Pete mentioned courses as well, about how PD is often about going on courses. Actually, most professional development doesn't happen on the courses. It's actually when you go back into your own classroom, when you talk to your own department. So there's professional development happening in all sorts of places, and we try to offer materials for each of the sort of different places that you might kind of be accessing or sort of doing your PD, even if you don't think it is PD. So just reading an article is obviously, can be professional development, because it triggers you to think in a different way about something.
I think you haven't used a word that I'm sure is on the front page of your website. So in fact, I'm going to check straight away, because you said where the greatest development is. If I open up the website, I'm pretty convinced there it is: collaboration, and working as a department, discussing as a department. In my department, we meet after school on a Wednesday, just really casually, to talk about how did we teach something, how could we change it, just for 40 minutes, and the ideas that we come up with. It's really nice, and that's professional collaboration, and it's a difficult thing. We always know that time is of the essence, and time is limited, and we always struggle with that. But that opportunity to collaborate in a department, it's so important to be created by leadership, and even if it's just created by yourselves after school, you come away with something and you've thought mathematically. Which happens to be one of the 5 big ideas, which I think I've referenced a few times in my many videos. But let's look at the website, because it's brand new, and the last month or so it's been released. So we're just into October. So I think in August, July, the new website, where you don't have to sign up now, you can just go on there. Yeah,
it was August, I think we released a new one.
And so...
so lots of people have...
Go on, sorry, Carol.
I think it's been a long time coming for the new website, because I think lots of people over many years have said it's very difficult to navigate, and there's so much on it I can't find what I need. So I think we launched this new website in August, so hopefully people will think it's a good sort of upgrade.
So what was the thought process then? Just trying to narrow down to what are the key elements, or is there something in particular that was the focus of when creating the new website?
I mean, we certainly wanted to make it a little bit easier to kind of find stuff, and so we've pared down. There aren't a massive number of categories, just those kind of 4 or 5 big categories there, and there are different ways in which you get into materials. We'll probably see this here. Sometimes you can get it through, because what's the distinction? Professional development and in the classroom. You'll find if you go in through those 2 different things, you'll come to the same sort of resources. So we're just trying to make it not very multi, lots of different drop-down menus at the top.
Go on, Carol.
It's worth saying that there are some things that don't appear on the website at the moment, or there's a limited amount of things on the website at the moment. But there are quite a few things where we know that we want to transfer them from the old website to the new one, but they need a bit of rework because they're quite dated, maybe lots of outdated links, language, that kind of thing. So those things are in sort of in production or reproduction, I suppose, to come onto the new website during the course of this year. And so, for instance, one of the things we'll look at a little bit later is the departmental workshops. There were 92 of them. I think we've got about 6 or 8 of them in there at the moment. but there will be more coming during the year. So we'll sort of keep flagging up when we release these.
Amazing. Let's start playing through the website then. Pete, as you referred to, we've narrowed it down to 5 titles at the top, and news and features we can. Well, we'll grab it up, but it is what it says it is, isn't it? When you're releasing latest roundups for primary and secondary and the newsletters, and these go out quite regularly, I assume.
Yeah, they do. I'm not quite sure what the frequency is, but are they every month, Carol? I don't know.
I think it's every 6 weeks.
Right, okay. And Charlie Strip, our director, occasionally does a kind of blog on things. Just recently done something. Sorry, that's my phone.
We'll carry on. It's fun.
Recently done something on when people go back to school, what are the key things that they want to focus on? So he's done one on that. So there's the blog.
And there's the podcast that you offer as well, which is which I've seen able to be downloaded. So it's responsive to what's going on, because I know the website will talk about COVID recovery, and we'll talk about some of the stuff in that shortly as well. But it is responsive, you can see. So plenty of options here. That's not what we're looking at today. So it's just introducing the first section. So professional development's been a key thing that you've obviously both been saying. So let's pick onto this. Just developing your classroom practice and pedagogy. So talk me through what we've got here. And a reminder, Pete, you have, yeah, there you go. I can see you turned up your mic. I know it was for the phone, but I could imagine you...
I just done it while my answer message was clicking in. I thought, yeah, I mean, well, this goes kind of back to what we started the conversation with. What we're quite, if there's anything that's our USP, I suppose, it is what's rich professional development. So we kind of start off by what do we really mean by CPD, and it is much more than what traditionally people think with CPD. People think of it as input, what you get. I've had some CPD. I went to a hotel in a big room and somebody gave me some CPD. CPD is what you continually do to develop yourself professionally. That's what the 3 letters stand for. So we've just done that. And then if you scroll down a little bit, it might be worth saying that what we had before in the old website is we had a separate website for Maths Hubs. Maths Hubs is now an element in the NCTM website because we run the Maths Hub program, and a key principle of the Maths Hub program is people working collaboratively in a work group, and that is this kind of mixture of getting a bit of input, but then going into your classroom and trying things out, and then coming back and sharing what other people have found out, planning together. All of that sort of stuff takes place in work groups. That's kind of the essence of rich CPD for us. And then there's some materials kind of underneath.
I mean, I've led work groups and also been members of them, and it's really nice because it's almost, there's no one person at the front, as you said, just in the kind of old style hotel big room. Thank you for turning up today. I'm going to read a whole workshop. Not about that. It's the collaboration, discussion, and I'm learning just as much as from the people who I run the work groups with, or two, back and forth. I've really enjoyed being a part of them. Obviously, we'll come back to the maths hubs, but here we are, the materials. Now, I'm hoping to do another interview with the primary leaders, so we're focusing on secondary in this hour.
Yep.
If I click on this, that would make a lot of sense. So I know there's an opportunity to explore here, but should we look at these materials first? Because you've as it says here, 6 broad mathematical themes, and it's not in line with the GCSE and the national curriculum, etc. So talk us through where these have come from and how we're going to be able to use these.
Yeah. Well, I suppose the important thing to say first of all is Key Stage 3. Sorry, Carol.
That's all right. Keep going, Pete. It's fine. You'll get the sense of this relationship at some point. Tom will get the sense of Pete and I are. Yeah, Pete.
Yeah, just Key Stage 3. And what we want. One of the difficulties, I think, for teachers, for all of us, when we use a national curriculum, is that it's very difficult in a document to get this kind of interrelationship and this interconnectedness of what are the big ideas. What you tend to see is separate programs of study statements. And what we wanted to try to do is to sort of at least pull out some themes. So those are the 6 themes that we think are key in the Key Stage 3 curriculum. There's a few decisions, weren't there, Carol, that we kind of made that might be surprising. Do you want to say?
Yeah, there certainly are. So you'll see, as soon as you look at the titles on the screen, most people will spot that algebra is missing, as it were. So we do have algebra within the 6 themes, but they fit for us within number. So when we first started developing these materials, it was Pete and I and a group of others, some Maths Hub leads and some other folk, and we talked through and sort of worked through the curriculum statements and trying to put things together, and felt sort of what things fitted together well. And you will know, Tom, that if you're thinking about a teaching for mastery journey, it's really about firm foundations and building one thing on another. And so for us, at Key Stage 3, the algebra content comes straight out of number. If you understand how number works, then you understand how algebra works. And so you'll find algebra within the number statements, the number sort of themes that we've got here. Similarly, you don't see trigonometry appearing in this as a title here, and some people might expect to find it in certain places. For us, it fitted within the multiplicative reasoning theme. So certainly at Key Stage 3, the content there fits within multiplicative reasoning. I think when you get to Key Stage 4, it's slightly different, and we'll perhaps have a look at that at some point in the future. But for now, this is where it's fitting.
I mean, it's about the firm foundations in Key Stage 3, and I don't like to mention Ofsted in these instances, but I think there is a reason why Ofsted are actually making it pretty obvious that they prefer a 3-year Key Stage 3, because they want the foundations of maths to be secure. I'm sure it was a session with Steve Lomax, one of the leads in Glow Maths, who talked about the firm foundations, and when you build on top, everything collapses below, and so this focus on Key Stage 3 makes perfect sense. So as we mentioned here, 6 broad mathematical themes. There's going to be a number of core concepts within each theme, and knowledge, skills, and understanding statements. Should we open one of these and have a look at one as an example? So, Pete, I think you had one in mind.
Yeah, I thought the geometry one might be interesting.
Okay. So, and I think we'd said we were going to look at constructions together.
Constructions, yeah.
Yeah, well, maybe before we do, Tom. Yeah, maybe before we do, just dwell on that bit there. So there's a theme level document. There's something that kind of talks about what are really the key big ideas in geometry as a theme, and then it breaks it up. These are the core concepts. 6.1, properties, perimeter, area, and volume. 6.2, they're core concepts. We call those core concepts. Construction, so we're calling a core concept. We'll have a look at that in a bit more detail. Let's look at that now then, Tom. We'll click on that.
I'm glad we look at constructions, because let's be honest, when people want to talk about math teaching, they look forward to certain lessons. They probably look forward to number and patterns and sequences. And constructions is one of those topics I would have, if I'm speaking out of turn for some people who are watching this.
I think so many people say this. That what a lot of us are, we desperately want to do is not teach tricks. Yep. What's the big idea? What are the key things that kids need to be aware of? Because I think you and I were talking about this before, Tom. There are often 2 kinds of people, and their attitude towards maths is so different. Some kids will say, the thing I like about maths is you don't have to remember anything. Have you got kids like this? They don't seem to have to remember everything, because they've got this kind of big things. And once you get that big thing, if you forget something in there, you can get it back.
You can derive.
It's not like geography or history. You've got to remember dates. There's lots of things you don't have to just blindly remember if you really understand. But then there's the other kid that says, I hate maths because you have to remember everything. Because some kids don't see them as connected. A lot of teachers say, I can do that with other topics. But constructions, put your compass point here, put an arc here. What else can you do other than give them instructions? Well, we've tried to sort of address that.
On a personal note, with constructions, it took me a lot. I was sorry when I started teaching, it was here's the step, do the next step, do the next step. And it only ever occurred to me that when I realised the point of what a circle was, every point on that circle is the same distance to the centre. Yeah. And I know that's a really simple idea, but when I realised that concept then made me realise why when you've got, let's say, an angle bisector, because every point is the same distance, and then the next up, because every point is the same distance. And it came back to that. And suddenly I can derive, even if I can't remember the step, which quite frankly I can't always do, I can derive from that. And from a very simple idea of the arc is the same distance to the center, which is, it's ludicrous that I didn't know that from the very beginning. And I always speak up when I don't think I'm good enough. Sorry, Carol, go ahead.
But no, but that is exactly, you know, that you will now be a better teacher of this bit of mathematics because of that realization. And there's always this thing of you don't know what you don't know. So you didn't know that you didn't know this bit. And this is where I think professional development and collaboration, particularly as you were saying earlier, comes into play, because had you had conversations with other teachers about that, somebody may have sort of realized that and sort of brought your attention to it, you know, sort of helped you sort of understand it and see it, and it changes what you do. So I think sometimes you have these realizations and they come from nowhere.
Well, it's my least favorite area of maths, so let's talk through this one.
If you just click to page 4, Tom.
Page 4, yeah, which I think is this one.
I think this was what you were. It was just that diagram there.
Okay.
So before we get into it, maybe worth saying, before we get into activities, of course there are activities in here, but unless you have, I see why that activity is a good activity. You've got to get to that stage. You need a bit of preamble. So we offer some big ideas. So, you know, just at this, maybe this is a little bit before what you were talking about, the arc, you know. I've got to draw a triangle, and I know one of the lengths, so I can do that. But I've got to maybe even get kids. I've got to get my ruler, and it's got to be 4 centimeters from this end, and it's got to be set. Oh God, how do I do that?
Just to reiterate, this is the bit we're looking at here. So constructing a triangle with lengths of 4 centimeters, 7 centimeters, and 9 centimeters. And yeah, you're absolutely right. I think you draw the biggest line because they've been told to, and then put your ruler, and then it doesn't reach. The 4, let's do it at back angle, but the 7, it doesn't reach.
Yeah. So dwelling on that circle, you know, so if you scroll down to the next page, it's kind of just, so that's really what you want to get kids to think about. And what do you know about all of the points on that left-hand circle? Oh, blimey, they're all, just like you were saying, they're all 4 centimeters away from there. So draw an arc is a procedural step that's got a bit of understanding behind it. And we do this a lot in mathematics, I think. We may, as teachers, and sometimes we may not, but we may, as teachers, know that journey from the original concept through to the procedure. And we say, well, let's help kids by just giving them the procedure, because we don't want to bore them with all that journey that takes such a long time. Yes, we do. We want to show them that, and then
we don't want to bore them. Pete, because you said we want to bore them with that. Yes, we don't want to bore them, but we want them.
You know what I mean? Yeah. You know, that's important. That is what you teach. We teach concepts. In a way, children then build procedures because you know they use those procedures because they understand the concept behind it. And then they say, the thing I like about maths is you don't have to remember all of these things. They're just obvious. The thing I quite like, sorry. Go on, Tom.
No, go ahead, Pete. Go on, please.
Yeah, so, and then the sort of thing we talk about there is, so then you can draw a triangle. But because you've got the circles there, you could imagine another triangle that's also 4, 7, and 9 underneath. Yeah? Well, what's that then? Oh, that's a kite. I've drawn a kite.
Oh, yeah.
What if the 2 circles are the same? Oh, blimey, I've drawn a rhombus if the 2 circles are the same. And what do I know about a rhombus? Well, you need to do some stuff about a rhombus. But the great thing about a rhombus is if you draw a diagonal and you draw another diagonal, blow me, one of the diagonals cuts one of them in half and perpendicularly cuts one of them in half. It's a perpendicular bisector. Oh. If you draw a diagonal in a rhombus, that diagonal bisects the angle. So we just scroll down a bit. We've got the rhombus there.
It's as if you knew it was coming.
So if kids understand, do you know what? All Miss is telling me is, if I draw a rhombus, I can do all of these constructions. How do I draw a rhombus? Oh, I'll just make all the sides the same. And then each of the constructions kind of makes sense. And in the student's eyes then, it's not a series of do this, do that, do the other. It's a big idea which they understand.
making those connections between topics and be able to derive the ideas as opposed to just knowing a series. In fact, I'm sure it was Jane Jones' interview with Craig Barton. I heard her say that along the lines of there are so many rules in maths versus there are no rules in maths. You just understand it and derive. There are far too many. I think we need to scroll up because we went past this. And Carol, when you were creating these, what were the well, Carol, can you talk to what these were to make sure we can use these sheets more efficiently, more effectively?
Yeah, so as I say, it was a small team that created these, including Pete and including Steve Lomax, actually, who you mentioned previously. So with each of these documents, we get these letters, I suppose, which flag up things further down. So this document is, as I said previously, it's kind of bridging that gap between classroom and PD, so they're both within this. So this first bit is talking about how we the big ideas behind the topic and some of the content. And then if you scroll further down, so these things here, such as representations, variations, these are big things in teaching for mastery, big ideas in teaching for mastery. You'll get down to the sort of classroom bits, I suppose, the bits you just scroll past there, which is the common misconceptions. They're flagged up, so things to look out for. If you've not taught it previously, but are, just interested, here are some of the things that your students might do. And then we get into these things, which are examples that you might use in your classroom. And what we've done is we've chosen some examples and exemplified on the left-hand side, and on the right-hand side, exemplified where in this one you see V for variation. So here's what's within this. And then L is our language letter. So some of the language that you might use and things to flag up to students. In the variation explanation there, you'll see it describes things quite carefully. So the last paragraph, one pair of lines has been deliberately drawn to as parallel to assess a common error, confusion between parallel and perpendicular. So it explains what's within that. And if you scroll further down, you'll see further examples with different letters. So you'll see there's another V there.
There would be.
There's a deepening, so how to deepen understanding, how to make those connections for your students, how to get them to connect it within this topic, but also to other bits of content. And then again, I'm not sure on this one we've got a PD prompt, but so these documents are used. Yeah, there may or may not be one in this one.
Oh, there you go, representation.
Representation, yeah. And so drawing about how things are represented.
I mean, basically what we're trying to do there, aren't we? We're saying here's what we think is a nice activity.
Yeah.
In the left-hand column, and here's why we think it's a nice activity. What are the features of it that make it a nice activity? And I think if you've got that, you've got some good resources, but you know why they're good, then that makes you resourceful, because you can then generate some other ones like that. Use the same kind of features to
and on that, Pete, I think it's important to say that although the documents themselves cover the entire Key Stage 3 curriculum, and when you look at the big ideas and how they're sort of connected to each other, sorry, the whole curriculum is covered. However, not everything is exemplified. So within this, there are only a few things that we've exemplified, because what we wanted to do was to flag up. Here are some examples, here are some good examples, and then for people to go away and think about other ones for themselves, because professional development is all about enabling people to do things for themselves. As Pete was saying earlier, you don't want to just give everybody, here it is, and I'm just going to have to keep on giving you more and more. And teachers want to think for themselves, but they sometimes might appreciate having it pointed out, this is what's happening here, this is why we've included this one, this is where you're seeing something. And then as part of a PD session in a department or elsewhere, they might think about taking a different key idea and exemplifying that, and what examples would we use for this one.
Should we talk more about professional development then? Because you mentioned departmental workshops. If I go back to the website, just to point out again, so for the 4 downloads within geometry, but the overall theme summarized, going back a screen, we saw the 6 themes, but there are departmental workshops and how to run them, because it's something I get regularly asked. I've got a department meeting, what can I do? Now, so it's a shame we didn't see one there, but within these, I'm just going to click on a random one. I will find one, you watch. With regards to PD, you suggested if there is going to be, on that right-hand side, if there's a PD there's an opportunity. Have I chosen earlier? So we'll find a PD, you watch. And,
there is.
Oh, yes, and that's a lovely task, which has been, I have used in CPD in the past. Just the discussion, what happens when you give this to pupils? And it's a lovely inquiry. But even that is a short thing that departments can use. Just discussing, even if you've got a 15-minute meeting, 20-minute meeting, I'd imagine these are kind of sharp tasks that could really hone in on the discussion on a topic.
Yeah. One of the I mentioned John Mason earlier when we were talking right at the beginning. One of the things that John has got as a phrase about pupil learning in classrooms is the distinction between working through a set of exercises and working on them. Working through or working on. What we want kids to do is to think about an exercise and work on it, and it might be connect things and maybe even create another example themselves. You know, that's a good exercise. If, however, kids are just turning the handle and working through them, and I finished, sir, can you give me some more now? You know, and they're not thinking about them, then that's no good. Exact parallel with teacher learning. Exact parallel with the way we learn.
Like Craig Barton's take on variation theory, and he said he's had abuse for it, but at least his workshop, his website, sorry, the questions are entered to link, and that's the point. It's working on them, not working through them. Is that an example of what you're referring to?
Yes, it is. But the thing I'm pointing to is that those are the useful activities that we do together as teachers. So this is an example of something. You look at an activity and you think, oh, that's a nice activity. Let's work on that a little bit. Well, what does working on that mean? It means let's generate some more like that. And I don't know whether you found this on the specialist program, Tom, but you've been part of the specialist program. The time when you get together with other teachers and plan an activity together, that's a delight.
Oh, yeah.
You learn so much doing that.
Oh, yeah. And what's nice about it, and this should be for all teachers, and something I'm fortunate enough to teach trainee teachers, I remind them you're always learning and being open to professional discussion and collaboration. And I might be seen as a specialist, and just because I'm doing this doesn't mean I know it all by any means. Every day I learn something new from a different teacher and think, I hadn't thought of that. You feel a bit embarrassed sometimes. I hadn't thought of it, but I mean, the fact that the idea that loci, I'm still shocked when I like to admit that one because it's so simple, but it actually is the premise to everything you do in constructions and loci. Let's go back there because we talked about professional development, the workshop, sorry, because I do think department leaders sometimes want that extra guidance. So if I go back to where we got to it from, so we were on professional development, and scroll down, CV opportunities, there was mastery materials, but there's this area here, explore supporting resources, which I think is the area where we see departmental workshop. Brilliant. Should we look into there, or should we go that way?
Yeah, let's do that.
There
were several routes to get to things. So actually, on that page that you want to start with, where you picked up the mastery materials, if you just carry on scrolling down, they're there as well.
Oh, would they have been? Oh, okay. Well, I like to do things the long way.
But thank you for doing it this way, because actually, if you just click back and get a bit just to where you were, there's these. There we go.
So let's go.
No, click on there, and then you
one, and then at the very bottom.
Extra resource, explore extra resources, isn't it, at the top there?
At the top, was it? Oh, that one there.
Where you were, that's it. Just before you, that's it, click on that. And before you clicked further, there were some other resources there as well that we just wanted to just flag up in passing. Yep. We're not going to talk about today, I don't think. That mathematical prompts for deeper thinking videos. We've got just so many things that are new on the site at the moment. So that's a set of videos with a PD session alongside them. So if you're asking about some PD sessions to run, then this is one option, and the departmental workshops are another. So we're going to have a look at those. But with each of these ones, you'll see there's a PowerPoint download, and then there's there's a video, and then there's a PowerPoint that goes alongside them. And that PowerPoint is basically a departmental workshop, or a workshop you can do with a group of teachers, or you could do it sat at home if you really wanted to.
People are always asking to see videos of certain things in action, so that's fantastic. That's really, really important. And as it points out at the bottom as a disclaimer, it was filmed before the virus. That's why they're sat next to each other, so that's fine.
Yeah, and they're and each of these is taken from each of the sort of questions that are tackled within these videos is taken from the PD materials, so it all ties in.
Brilliant. That was thank you, Carol, because I'd have missed that, and I didn't know about the fact you can see those videos. Now, this is an area I'm also a big fan of. So we're going to mention it now because it makes sense go left or right. I think the biggest impact for me when I started on my journey, and the thing that's when I'm working with other staff, when they see the bar modeling, when they see algebra tiles, when they see representation, it's one of the biggest, ooh, I can use that moment. And I've noticed that the guidance documents and the videos that accompany, which I assume here they are, these are just really easy to take away and start using. Is there anything you want to add to these? Because
I think I would actually just be when we were putting the PD materials together. What we did was we developed them. There was a small team developing, actually sort of doing the writing of them, but actually we worked with the various specialists. So we would take some of these materials to various groups of specialists and get some feedback on them. And one of the things that came out quite clearly from many of the teachers we worked with was that they were sort of hesitant or nervous about using representations in Key Stage 3. They said, I know they do a Coutinho chart in Key Stage 2. I don't know what it is, and so we put together these documents which connect with the PD materials. So, you will see each of these things referenced within the PD materials, but then we've drawn them out as a separate section as well. So that if you want to look at a Coutinho chart, if you want to look at Queasy rods and think about how you might use them in Key Stage 3, here are some suggestions.
Coutinho chart, I saw Helen Hackett, who's one of the specialists for primary and central maths, have used it in front of me, and I got completely confused. But you don't know what you don't know until you know it. And then I was like, oh, okay, I think I know what's going on now. And I didn't know the Coutinho one was there. That's great, because it's been a goal of mine to actually go back to this, because I've been talking about place value a lot recently at school. And in a session I did yesterday, I wish I'd known that was there. I should have recorded this the other day. Would have been more useful. But yeah, the guidance documents are there. There are videos as well, so short videos. We're talking, these are all 3 or 4 minutes, I think, having looked at a few of them. I've used some of them in sessions in the past as well. Accessible, easy to use as a department. I think these are really quick, easy takeaways if you want to get that opportunity to use more representation in Key Stage 3. And funny you say that you're worried. You come across staff, Carol, that are scared to use in Key Stage 3. If you don't use in Key Stage 3, don't bother in Key Stage 4, because the kids are going to respond negatively. It's got to be part of the journey in my eyes. You can't do it all the way Key Stage 2. Then forget it for 3 years, because pupils don't want to go backwards. They feel like they're being drawn backwards to representation. Using it all the time shows it's part of our journey, it's part of our learning.
But it's also a nice link, I think, with Key Stage 2. So we often talk about the difficulties with transition and that hiatus between Key Stage 2 and Key Stage 3. So if we can use in Key Stage 3 some of those same representations that they were using in Key Stage 2, we've got a better chance of the children sort of connecting that maths and saying, oh, it's that same sort of thing that we did in Key Stage 2 back in Miss Jones' class.
Coherence is a good word here, isn't it? That's a big idea. Somehow within the website as well, there seems to be a nice coherence. Let's bounce back, because we're going to look at this as well. So awesome things we've found there. So departmental workshops, who was 1 hour sessions designed. So there we go. If you've got a head of department or CPD leads, got an hour's gap, looks like you've got sessions set up for it. So talk me through it.
Yeah. So as Carol said earlier, there were in the previous website loads of these. We've kind of brought them up to date a little bit, and so these will be added to. So we've picked out, what have we got? Six maybe?
Bit more.
For the arithmetic. Yeah, 6 or
12.
7. So
animation on the right.
Handouts.
Pardon me.
The stuff on the right is a sort of resources to go with that. So essentially, it's I don't know whether they call it a script, but some guidance notes to say, if you want to sit down for an hour with a group of teachers, could be you, head of department, with your department, but it could be, as you say, Tom, any PD lead working with a group of teachers, and you want to have an hour's activity around a theme, what are you going to do? Well, some suggestions for a little discussion point you might start off with, then a little activity. If there's an activity, here's the resources that we've offered you for the activity. There's also a kind of pointer to, if you want to carry this on a little bit, there's links to the PD materials that says this element of the PD materials links quite nicely to this theme. I thought we'd look at the algebra one maybe.
Okay, I'm going to I'll open up the handout as well.
Yeah.
So we'll get the 2 ready. There's my.
Yours is a darn sight quicker than mine, Tom.
To have the wired internet at home is an absolute win, I can tell you. So algebra, and there's the workshop, and there's the PowerPoint. So we'll start with the script, as you put it.
Well, maybe let's start with that handout.
Let's not then. Let's do that.
We talked about this before, didn't we? When we were talking about the themes in the PD material. So algebra is not a separate theme. It comes out of number. But conjecture, for a lot of kids, it's nothing to do with number. You ask kids what these things mean, they won't talk about number. They'll look at that first one. I'm conjecturing here. They might look at this first one, 5a plus 6a is 11, and they'll say, well, that's collecting like terms, or that's adding up apples, or something. Do they know that what that is the distributive law? 5 eighths and 6 eighths are 11 eighths. 5 thousands and 6 thousands are 11,000. 5 sevenths and 6 sevenths is 11 sevenths. It's all the same stuff. If you keep the unit the same, 5 of them and 6 of them is 11 of them. That's arithmetic. It's the structure of arithmetic, and you have to understand that arithmetic works that way, and then you generalize. And once you've generalized, so do kids really see every algebraic statement or equation, or I suppose in this case an equivalence that we're saying? Do they say, oh yeah, that's the way numbers work? Do kids know that the difference of 2 squares is the difference between 2 squares, 2 square numbers?
Oh, yeah.
You know that? Probably not. So the thing for the departmental workshop is thinking about how do we approach algebra through that thing about looking at the way numbers work. So if maybe you want to click back to the script, So there's an overview, you know, what algebra is, what algebraic thinking is. Mm-hmm. And, you know, the suggestion is, well, let's start off, activity 1, let's start off, well, just get a bit of paper. What do you think algebra is? You know, get people to think about what their initial thoughts are. How do you introduce kids to algebraic thinking, symbols as generalizations? Every now and again in the little script, there's this green box which says, you probably want to draw this out of the conversation. So it sort of helps the facilitator or the leader of the PD or whatever just to structure the conversation a little bit. And then after that discussion, it suggests you go to that slide that we've just looked at and you talk about that. If we go back to the PowerPoint, let's just try this. So you need to put this on slideshow.
Okay. Oh, it's going to be a bit more exciting, isn't it? So, okay.
Click.
Ooh. Look at what we do. Oh, okay.
So you might just show that and say, what you know, what's happened there. Just go back 2 clicks.
So it was.
Do it again. So one of the things and this sort of indication this is the way you might do this as a PD lead. One of the things I like to do with this is to say, when you look at the initial square, think of it as a shape, but also think of it as a number. It is a square number. Mm-hmm. By the way, how many kids really know that when we talk about squares, we're talking about numbers that fit as a square? You know, do they know that's why they're called square numbers?
At this point, I don't have my number blocks annual with me, with my 2-year-old son, because the fact they introduced the number 4 and 9 as squares, I just thought that was really clever. Just tiny little detail, but instead of them all just being this kind of which is taller, 4 suddenly a square, and he sings about it, which is very nice.
So, I mean, this is the beginning, isn't it, of n squared minus 1. What you're doing is you're taking 1 away, and you're taking 1 from different squares. And blow me, what you get is you get a rectangle. Well, how big's the rectangle in relation to the original square? Well, it's 1 more and 1 less. Now, that's why n squared minus 1 is n plus 1 multiplied by n minus 1. Not because if you multiply out the brackets and your things cancel in the middle, oh, blimey, it happens to be the same. No, it's because that's the way numbers work. Mm. And so that's, you know, that's quite a nice discussion point to watch as a department if you want to just click through the rest of it, Tom.
Same again. It's the same happening each time, isn't it?
And then at some stage, you want to think about, is that going to happen? Is it because it's 1 square? No, it's not because it's 1 square. It's because it's a square. Take any square out. N plus 2, a big, you know, different square. What about if it's any square? You know, why? Kids need to know, A, that the difference of two squares is the difference of two squares, and why a squared minus b squared is a plus b multiplied by a minus b. So and that seems a nice activity to do as a group of teachers and to kind of think about. So now let's have a look at our scheme of work then. This is what the departmental workshop finishes with. Let's have a look at our scheme of work. How are we teaching algebra? Are we teaching it in that kind of way? Are there things that we need to rejig a little bit so that kids really understand and it's not just juggling with symbols?
I think one of the first sessions for me on the specialist journey, I remember seeing the Venn diagram, procedural fluency, conceptual understanding, and of course that sweet spot's in the middle. And then I think it was on a set of weighing scales, just taken from a paper somewhere. But it is that reminder, and it's funny that the teachers I work with, certainly when I'm getting to work with new staff, that why wasn't I taught this way is the sentence that gets said back to me over and over. They got told, this is what you do, and this is what you do. This is what you do, and this is what you do. And I'm loving, and I had a conversation with the maths teacher on the train home from work yesterday. So we both said we'd love to go back and do our maths degrees again.
Yes.
Because we want to say about the actual, there was no, everything links in that. But sadly, we don't get paid the same amount to go back to university. So we both said it wasn't a good idea, but we'd like to be able to do. The concept behind is so important.
Did I tell you this story when we were talking before, Tom? It just came to me, remembering when I was at school and doing my A-levels, and the lad I sat next to, and we often did have problems together. He said to me, did I tell you this story? He said to me, he was very perplexed because he'd forgotten, he couldn't remember the formula for how you worked out the distance between 2 points, knowing their coordinates. Is it x2 minus x1? Is it x1 minus x2? Do you have to square it? Do you have to square root it? He couldn't remember what it, and it suddenly occurred to me as he was talking to me, and I thought we were sort of at the same level, but he was working at the level of memory, complete memory. He'd no idea that it was Pythagoras. He had not made that link. And so I didn't remember whether it was two. In fact, it doesn't matter whether it's x2. It's Pythagoras. But he didn't know that. And nobody had taught him that.
Yeah. Amazing, really is. Let's go back to the website. So we've seen, scroll back. So departmental workshops, the animations and handouts that are supplied as well. They're fantastic. Now, Carol, I don't want to click back until you might tell me there's a better way.
No, that's fine.
You can guide me here because I know we want to talk about the shaping the Year 7 curriculum. It's one of the things we plan to talk about today. So what way should I go?
Well, the quickest way to get to that is to just go back to the very top of the screen and just click on the NTTM logo, I think. And I think it's through there is the, scroll down, you've got the coronavirus.
Home page, and we put the coronavirus stuff
so
on.
Find out more, I think it is.
So is that here? Sorry. Oh, pardon me.
I think it's there,
yeah.
And the new school year, okay. And what?
I'm sorry, apologies. I'm saying I think it's there because that's the way I'd get to it. The website was so sort of ingrained in my mind about where things were. This is the new one, obviously.
So we're looking at this one, I imagine.
Yes, that's right.
Break on secondary today. So there it is. Excellent. So here you've got teaching maths in COVID recovery. Now, one thing we didn't say at the start, what NCTM's stance. You've put out papers in the past as to what your feelings are on certain textbooks on mixed attainment, and probably sitting on the fence with it, but that's fair in that what you're saying is we are not saying you must do this and we're not saying you must do that, but the principles of teaching for understanding can apply in all circumstances. So the one thing the NCTM does do is give guidance on certain areas of textbooks and whatnot. And I think that's what you've done here as well, because some people are saying it's recovery curriculum. Some people are just saying carry on and do what you usually do, assess what you know. So it's something that the NCTM does try to do, isn't it? And support guidance when it comes to leadership as well.
I think so. So that with this particular document, I think many math teachers will say, well, that's quite obvious that what you do is that you don't try and rush, if we're teaching for a genuine, deep and connected understanding, you don't say, okay, well, you've missed out part of Year 7. You haven't really done Year 7, as we would want you to do, but we're just going to go on to Year 8, or we're going to just try and catch up on Year 7 in the first couple of weeks, and then sort of take it from there. I think most maths teachers understand that. So this is more a document in many ways to support teachers and heads of department if they need to be able to sort of wave it at senior leaders and say,
make their case. Yeah,
make a case. It helps them to make a case, saying, look, the advice is that we don't try and do that. We have to sort of do exactly what we normally would do, which is work out where kids are, think about where we want to get them to, and then find the best way to get them from where they are to where we want them to be. You know, so that's, for me, that's the essence of teaching. You know, where are they? Where do you want to get them to?
Now, I know we plan to look at shaping the Year 7 curriculum, but you can't help but notice straight away here,
Yeah.
about to teach something in Key Stage 3. It looks like we've got resources and videos on how to introduce topics, I assume.
Right. So what we've got here is we've worked with some very sort of experienced teachers to just. We're thinking of it as sort of eavesdropping on their conversations or eavesdropping on their thinking about what do they consider when they're planning to teach a topic. So we're very aware that at this particular time, there are many sort of teachers, maybe NQTs, maybe non-specialist teachers who haven't taught some of these things before. NQTs may have not had as much classroom experience as they normally would have had if we were in normal times. And so we thought these sort of things might be helpful, particularly for those teachers, but we think they're just of interest to teachers generally, and to have that sort of opportunity to get inside somebody else's head and find out what they're thinking, what they consider. It's that thing of, as I said, you don't know what you don't know. And so if you sort of see another teacher say something about, yes, well, of course, when I teach constructions, I do this and this is what I'm thinking about, you think, I've never thought like it a bit like that before. You know, that's new to me. So it helps you sort of develop as well. So those are there. There's a short video. I think we've kept them to about 20 to 30 minutes where we can. And then there's accompanying documents which have got links to various bits and pieces as well. So on this one, you'll see that the video above, it's actually a playlist, and so they're only two there at the moment. We've got other ones that are coming online.
More coming. Don't be scared.
So on the video,
sorry, Karen. If you click
on the video bit itself, sorry. On the video bit itself, Tom, further down.
First, then Pete. Pete, wait your turn.
Sorry. Further down, drop slightly down. Where those now up on the actual video bit itself. You'll see a playlist. Yeah, up on the top right hand corner of the video, you'll see it's a playlist. There we go.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. We got there. So there's only 2 there at the moment, but there will be at least 12 there by the end of the term.
Brilliant. Right, we were going to be looking at shaping the Year 7 curriculum because I remember the EEF, I think the 8th guidance is that transition from Year 6 to 7. And when you don't have through schools and it's not part of the same multi-academy trust that's maybe following the same journey, secondary teachers don't always have the right knowledge or enough knowledge of what's been going on in primary. So I think this is a really powerful focus for schools. So talk us through what we've got here, and if it's just, I know there's new materials for primary as well, so I'm hoping to do a separate video on that. Talk us through what we've got here.
I mean, the big idea here is what are those really core things? There's a number of our materials that do that. What are the really core things that really make a difference? Of course, you have to teach all of the national curriculum, but there are some things. We looked at that multiplicative reasoning, you know, that's it's like a milestone concept. What are these really big ideas they have to get? And those are going to be very important as kids come back, you know, after having lockdown and whatever, and they come back. Do you actually try to catch up everything, or do you concentrate on those things that matter? Now, there was a document that came out for primary teachers in July, teaching mathematics in primary schools, which is essentially quite a detailed non-statutory guidance for the national curriculum. And some of the non-statutory guidance in there was saying there are some key ideas in the primary national curriculum that are, they call them ready to progress criteria. Get these right and the kids are ready for the next stage. And they're separated into year group documents. So in the Year 6 one, it says, get these right in Year 6 and they're really ready for secondary. Well, we thought secondary teachers need to know about this. It's very likely, it says teaching maths in primary schools, they're not going to look at it. So we ought to try to flag it up. And so that's what this suite of materials is to do, is draw people's attention to the primary thing, particularly the Year 6 one, and help them navigate around what are these ready to progress criteria then. So if you scroll down a bit, there's an introduction, the first thing on there, shaping, yes, the introduction. So that will just take a bit to download. And it just gives a kind of overview of there's this new document out and you might not have known about it. Even if you don't look at any other part of it, please look at the year 6 stuff, because it gives you, there's just a little snapshot of the table that's in those materials. Year 6 ready to progress criteria. The big idea is that if you absolutely got those in year 6, and year 7, you know as a teacher, you're building on strong foundations and you can use those things. But like we talked about with, you know, kind of assessment and finding out what kids know and whatever, you want to check that, do they really understand these big ideas? So go back to so there's a little bit of introduction about find that material. There's a little video, a short video about the year 6 ready to progress criteria. You could watch that.
Where do I find that? Sorry.
Well, there's a link in the introduction to that to those videos.
Oh yes, there it is. Okay.
They are year 6 guidance and the short video. But there's still quite a lot of ready to progress criteria in there for year 6. But we looked at them and we thought, well, actually, they cluster around some pretty big things. In a way, we've done the same as we did with the PD materials document. Let's pick out some key themes. And we think those are it. Place value. If you're really cracked place value, you can hit the ground running in year 7. But what are the things you need to crack? Additive and multiplicative structures, maybe not something that people think, but that's a big idea. Fractions, it's always a big thing. And reasoning with geometrical properties, not just knowing the names of things, but reasoning with properties, big thing. If you've got those things in year 6, now we can really start year 7, rather than check back to year 4 stuff that, you know, reteach stuff. That's the old problem with Key Stage 2-3 transition, is that maybe we reteach too much stuff. So I thought I'd just dip into the additive and multiplicative, because it was sort of a, hey, what's that sort of thing.
I like this because for leadership as well, when they think about, I still find it shocking that every school has their own different journey. We all think we know how to do maths best. I'm not saying I do, by the way. But it's funny how every secondary school is so very, very different. Yet primary schools are very clear what they're doing in year 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Maybe not the order, but it's very clear what they're teaching. In year 7, we then say, go nuts. Everyone do their own thing. But actually what you've come for here, what you've created here is 4 ideas of saying, these are going to be the foundations on which you can build the rest of everything.
So there's a little bit of a sort of thing about what do we mean by that, you know, that really, I remember Anne Watson saying this very vociferously at a conference, this is years ago, and she banged the lectern. There are not 4 operations. There are 2 structures. Additive, multiplicative. One of the things that we know is if you teach addition and subtraction separately and you don't see them as 2 sides of the same coin, you're missing a trick. You know, this is this part of, you don't have to remember 2 things. Maths is easy. You don't have to remember 2 things. You only have to remember 1 thing. If you know an addition fact, you know another addition fact and 2 subtraction facts. So there's a bit about that. Same with multiplication. 1 structure, multiplicative structures. Division is looking at multiplication from the other end, sort of thing. Do kids know why, if you take a multiplication and you double one number and you half another, why do you get the same product? Well, you can use representations to show why that's true. So really understanding those 2 structures.
That's represented here, isn't it? So 12 times 15, a third of this times that by 3. That's a lot. And again, that wouldn't be as clear without the representation, would it? Yeah,
without the area model, yeah. And then we kind of talk about why is that important? Where does that go? Why is that a solid foundation so that, oh, now we can do these things in Key Stage 3? Mm-hmm. And we picked out in that progression to Key Stage 3 thing. I don't know whether people have thought about this. But you know, what are you doing when you're rearranging formula? If you look at that formula, can you home in on the fact that there's an additive relationship there? I know one of the addends is a product, is AT, but essentially I'm not going to think about that at the moment. It's something equals something plus something. And because I understand additive relationships, I'm writing in a different way. That's what you're doing when you're rearranging formulae. It's not it's understanding a concept in order to do a procedure fluently. It's that conceptual and procedure you were talking about, Tom. And then when you look at AT equals V minus U, you say, right, now I'm going to put my multiplicative structure spectacles on, and I'm going to say, that's something multiplied by something equals something, and I can write that in a different way.
And this is all from part whole.
Yes, yes.
And you can represent them all as parts and whatnot. And if I know A plus B equals A plus B, so should I go 7 plus 3 equals 10? I know 10 equals. I know 10 take away 7 equals 3, and so on and so forth. So again, bar model, the first time I came across it, and you absolutely that can be represented. This formula here can be represented. AT would be in a bar together, but initially, as you say, it's an additive relationship. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah, and then the multiplicative. This is such a big thing, isn't it? Kids understanding that any two numbers can be connected by a multiplication. And this is still it's a milestone, it's a watershed thing for kids. And there's lots of research out there that says, if you ask kids what's the relationship between 3 and 6, they might say add 3, but a lot of kids will say double. If you ask kids what's the relationship between 3 and 5, very few kids will say there is a multiplicative relationship between those two. It can't be. It's only add 2. Because additive is so strong at that stage. But to really understand 3/5 and 5/3, you have to know that you can connect 3 and 5 by a multiplier that isn't a whole number.
Is that because you can't divide 5 and 3? You can't divide 3 into 5, can you? You can't do it. When we use that language, you can't do it. Well, you can.
Yes, that's right. And sometimes you need an intermediate, don't you? Well, let's divide it and make it 1, and now multiply it and make it 5. If I've divided it, I've got a third, and if I multiply it, I've got 5/3. Getting kids to understand that. And you can't teach that well at Key Stage 3 unless they've really understood the distinction between additive and multiplicative structures when they come up to you, and that's a ready to progress criteria.
On a personal note, so looking back to the website, this suddenly makes me think, right, when we think about what tasks do you want to start with at the start of year 7, and this year would have been especially important with the gap perhaps in learning, what activities do I want to start with? And you focus on some of these because they're going to be coming up, and what a nice way to start the year and say, okay, now I believe we're ready. And really, as you pointed out, with those the bar models there, and with those kind of representations, this is what we're going to be using over and over. I think that's a really nice, lovely thing. Well, I'm enjoying these resourceful interviews. Have all been very different because all different types of websites. Sometimes they've been just, here's some questions, how do you use them? Here's a website, how do you like Jonathan Hall's MathSpot, the resources to support the learning. This one is very much about the development and for leadership, which again, the teachers can take stuff away from the website. But it's very clear here that leaders have got a great resource to support what they're doing.
Yeah.
Let's we go to the tab. We've talked about professional development in the classroom. I'm not sure I've clicked on actually, but there's I'm a big fan of number blocks, and you referenced some of the COVID recovery. I think is it here? I think it might, or was it the next section, the assessment materials that I want to talk? I guess they're in the teaching for mastery section.
I think if I heard both, but
yes, they will. You can get to them.
Let's try this way.
Yeah.
Because this is, here we are. This is the one that I think are really nice, and again, it's there for primary, and that links back. So there you go, Carol, as you said, lots of ways to get to it. For the secondary mastery materials, assessment materials, pardon me. The word assessment means different things to different people, and often the word assessment things, this is you can do for a test.
Yes.
But we're talking formative and summative. This is an idea of where we want them to be able to go, and also if you're trying to create good questions. And these are the ideas of mastery and mastery with greater depth. So here we are talking about number. You've linked them to the national curriculum, but with some ideas of what kind of questions, if they are getting it, understanding it, and truly understanding it, maybe. This is a really quick resource for teachers to take away. And I wanted to make sure this one was pointed out because I think it's one of the best quick wins on the website, because they're going to be people.
There's another link, isn't there, Tom? In that one, you've just flicked past that number line one. Yeah, link back to how place value and just understanding how numbers fit together in the number system is crucial. You need to know, have kids got this? Because then I can build on it and get more sophisticated key stage 3 ideas. So, you know, a simple activity like that and getting some discussion about, and maybe sometimes leaving some of the marks out. I mean, this is part of the working on. What we'd like teachers to do is to take that and modify it and add to it and develop it and do different things with it. There was one I just thought of. I wonder whether we wanted to. Where did I say it was?
While you're looking, Carol, Carol,
oh yeah, I'm interrupting.
I was going to say,
throw a voice in it.
That's okay. This is very similar to the PD materials. These assessment materials cover all of the Key Stage 3 curriculum. However, not everything is exemplified. Again, I think it links to what Pete was saying there. It was that we want teachers to look at these and think about the structure of the question and say, okay, so I can see how this question is sort of created and what it's doing, and so then I can create my own, you know, for other topics and things that I want to look at. It's not an exhaustive set of examples.
Yeah, we ummed and ahed about whether to call these assessment materials, you know, because of so we know what these are, and we had to put something, you know, to say these are not just print them out, give them to the kids and sit down and write the answers to them but even, you know, they're teaching. You know, what is the difference between teaching and assessment? What is that? You know, often the best assessment is coming out of a lesson where you know you have taught that well because the feedback you've got from the kids has meant they've understood it. Bang, assessment, you've had it. That's the best assessment. So these are teaching materials, really. On page 18, I hope might be nice.
Oh, this one, okay, yeah. I thought I'd crash for a second there, but okay, yeah.
Oh yeah, that one, yeah. What we wanted to push, this is going back to this thing about conceptual again, is that we don't want, you know, assessments to be just assessing, can they do stuff? So this is some stuff on coordinates. What do you want to assess when kids have done something on coordinates? Do you really only just want to assess, can they plot coordinates? There's more to it than that. You know, here's the opposite vertices of a rectangle. What might the other ones be? That requires some thinking. You're doing some procedural stuff under the bonnet there, but the core thing is you're thinking with those procedures, and that for us is, you know, that diagram you were talking about, that the scales and the Venn diagram, conceptual, procedural. You've got to try and meld them together in some way so that kids don't think that learning maths is just watching teacher demonstrate things and then copying that demonstration. That's not what learning maths is.
That example of the two vertices of a square, I had to grab this. It was Tom Frank who introduced me to this book.
Yeah.
And
yes, lovely.
Is in there, and where could they be? What if I instead of plot all 4 points? And there's a lovely scaffold as to how to really adapt just a very simple, as you suggested, plotting vertices. Well, actually, we can extend that into all sorts of depth without having to go into year 9, 10, 11. Properly mathematical thinking. And as soon as you said that, I thought, I know I've seen that in this book.
Yeah.
There's more here than I'd realised was fantastic. Now, I'm fortunate enough to have been on the Teaching for Mastery journey, and I suppose what we can do at this stage, as I think we've gone possibly over an hour, so I'm always determined we try and keep these as compact as possible. But there are materials in here. It talks about the opportunities, and we'll reference that when we get to the maths hubs. There is more information if leadership are considering, if they want to take a look at this journey and get involved with the maths hubs. What is mastery? What are the 5 big ideas? I know there was a research area as well, and talking about it's some of the research papers there. It is mastery research, so will still be there. So it is all founded in research. Is there anything else in particular from the Teaching for Mastery section that you feel we must point out? Because then we're going to talk about the maths hubs, and then we're going to have to wrap up.
I think we've probably got all the things we said we were going to do. Let's maybe just flag up the maths hubs thing. We came in talking about work groups and so on, but there's a section there.
Indeed. Well, there were 40 of them now across the country, 3 more this year. And the maths hubs do different ones in different areas. So as you can see across England, there are certain regions. And these are some of the groups that are running. If I click on secondary, so it might be that your local, it's not every maths hub isn't necessarily running every single work group, or is that still the case, or has that changed?
That's pretty much the case, although every maths hub does have secondary mastery specialists, and they have the opportunities for development work groups, and then the sort of the embedding support work. It's the 5 to 8 continuity, challenging topics, and the mathematical thinking for GCSE, which are the 11 to 16 ones that they usually run at least one of them. Many of them do actually run all 3 of them, but it's their choice about whether they think there's a demand in their region for that particular work group. And then when we go on to the post-16 ones, there's a research GCSE one, a core maths, and a pedagogy one. The core maths and the pedagogy are running in conjunction with the AMSP. And again, those aren't necessarily in every single area, in every single region, but they all do at least one of them.
I think we've said all this without pointing out one key word. How much do these cost?
They're free.
They're free.
Free. Not only are they free, but there are some of the work groups, particularly the mastery ones, do have some teacher funding to cover release time. So it's not just free, Tom. It's not free. We pay. There's funding there available. And
that's the point, though. You're investing in people's professional development, and you're trying to get the schools on side in that respect. And so, with the maths hubs, if there is a link, I think just here, find your hub. To remind people, go and type in your school name, find out where you're based, and see which one of these it is. Get in touch with them and find out what's going on, because I know some of them right now, and people could be watching this at any date. They are going to be launching new courses as the year goes on, more new work groups, but they're looking for schools to be signing up. So follow them on Twitter. They're all probably on Twitter. I'd have thought all 40 are now, or at least.
I'm sure they will be. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's also just worth pointing out, Tom, that although in normal situations, our circumstances, our provision would be face-to-face. Obviously, in the sort of current climate, we are doing online professional development. So with our mastery specialists, we've run things online instead. And looking ahead, certainly we sort of intend to have a blended approach this year and possibly into the future. So we are sort of taking account of the current situation.
Thank you for taking us through the New Look website. And if leaders of departments or leaders in schools haven't seen how this can be supporting them, then I don't know if they've even watched the last hour, because the opportunities for development as a team, as individuals in the classroom, and just the resources there are really clear. And I think you're right, oddly enough. I don't. Obviously, with the last website, maybe I think it's an improvement, isn't it? We can see what's going on. It's a little bit more, a little less clunky, perhaps. I am trying. I can't see my mouse now. I know you can see what I'm doing here, which is always quite frustrating. So there you are on screen. I have to do this. I probably should have dropped it by now, but the section of this podcast presentation, whatever you want to call it, no textbook required, from a classic 80s album from this artist, but you'll be singing along because here are the words.
There's some mess that's been on my mind. It's all online, no textbook required.
Name the artist. Me.
But singing that, Tom.
That's me. That's me. Yeah. Oh, why not?
We forgot to join in. I'm sorry.
Oh no, you I think you were just kind of sat back and appalled. I always point this out that I'm not anti-textbook. I just love how much you shared online, and as Pete, you said earlier on, I don't want anyone to pick up any resource without actually giving thought as to why using those questions or using those resources. But the music, you do recognise the 80s artist I've sampled, don't you?
Phil Collins.
Yes, there you go. There you go. And there's my recreation of his famous album. No jacket required. The point is, what are your favourite online resources and why? And thank you for actually recognising who the artist is, because I've embarrassed myself where other guests haven't. Pete, you've got a couple for me, and I know you wanted to start with the ATM.
Yeah, there are 2 main subject associations, and that's the Mathematical Association and the Association of Teachers of Mathematics. And I mean, we think teachers should be members of one, if not both. I'm a member of both. But I flagged up ATM, could have flagged up the Mathematical Association, lots of resources there, not just actually for people who are members. So, you know, even if you're not a member, you can get to some. I don't know whether you want to look at it on classroom resources.
Yep.
CPD for mathematics. Can you see it?
Yeah, on open resources, so it's open so everyone can get it.
Yeah. Lovely little snippets, 2 or 3 or 4 minutes on some important ideas in maths education. One of the things that we can forget when new things come on board is what's gone on before. We've got a very rich heritage of maths education in this country, and actually as a country we know a lot. There are people who know a lot. British maths educators are looked at worldwide to be preeminent here, and you've got some of them here talking about, you know, big ideas in maths education, and they're very, very accessible, they're very thought-provoking, and they'd be a lovely thing to start off a department meeting with to look at. So I recommend those. But generally, please join the subject.
Awesome. Your second choice, Pete. It's
God bless him,
choice,
Don Stewart, who's recently sadly died. What a lovely bloke he was. I've worked with him a number of times. There's a massive website of resources here. In fact, that thing that we've just looked at about the 2 verses of a rectangle and what are the other 2, I mean, that idea I got initially from Don's blog. Everything is beautifully combining the fluency and the conceptual understanding and getting kids to reason and think and be creative. Actually, I mean, there's so much on here that you can't show everything, but click on anything and you'll get something that says, oh blimey, I never thought of it that way. You know, it's such rich stuff, so I'd really recommend that.
We're still hoping to record an episode of ResourceFULL onto this website, so it's on the way. But in past episodes, Carol, because I've given you 3 websites today, because the first 2 I've already covered, but we still let's find out why you like them. So more, same, less, which is the very first resource.
Okay, so this one, I think I really like it because it's a structure for a resource, and it's very, very simple in its sort of concept, but actually quite powerful. So I think once students have tried 1 or 2 of these, they get the idea. You can then use it time and time, that same structure, time and time again, for different bits of content. So with anything, it's not just about the students doing the task, it's the thinking that goes behind it. And I think these really make children think. And then it's the teacher's skills in drawing out key features of why they've made some of those choices. And for instance, in the Pythagoras ones, how is it you've managed to keep that hypotenuse the same length? I like the idea with these and with other sort of resource structures where there's an impossible section, and trying to get children to reason about, well, why is it impossible? Why can't we put anything in there? And with some of these ones, why is it that in this one we've only got 1 response that's possible, whereas in this cell we've got multiple responses that are possible? So I think eliciting that deeper thinking, this is a really nice way to do it. This is a nice activity to really tap into that. And
you also chose, again, a website that has been featured. There's nothing wrong with that. Mathbot. You chose this because it's just great.
So Mathbot, I particularly like the tools section. Thinking back to when I was within the classroom, I often just wanted to be able to, if you just click on the tools there for me, if you've just wanted to have a place value chart or a Gategno chart or some sort of counters, those kind of things. And I like the fact that these are really easily accessible, and they've got quite a lot of adaptations that you can make. So you can change what the numbers on the grid are quite easily, or you can move when you multiply by 10 on a place value chart, you click things left or right really, really easily. And so I think they're really sort of accessible and really, really useful tool in the classroom.
However, because we featured those, I allowed you to have another one. So to finish off today, you wanted to feature a STEM website.
The STEM library. So the STEM e-library, as Pete said, we've got such a rich heritage of maths, pedagogy, maths resources in this country. And just because something's old doesn't mean to say it's not still relevant and good. And one of the sort of my favourite activities from my teaching career was the use of Language of Functions and Graphs, which was a Shell Centre publication. And I don't know whether you can access it there or not, but it's something that you have these little booklets that you can hand out to students, and they're just such fantastic questions. But inside, with this Language of Functions and Graphs publication, there's the printable sheets, and then there's kind of all the commentary that goes alongside it. And so there's a sort of a guide to how you might introduce this lesson, the sorts of questions, the sorts of responses that you might see from children, how you as a teacher might respond to them. And it's just such a fantastic and rich resource that I just wanted to flag it up. So for
this was the first time that we were introduced to the genius of Malcolm Swan. That was Malcolm Swan that wrote a lot of that stuff. Fantastic.
Yeah, so it's so if you're in the search box there, put Language of Functions and Graphs, you will find it.
Do that again?
You may not be able to download it unless you've signed it, but we'll see.
I lost you then. Sorry, I don't know if that's
Language of Functions and Graphs.
Oh, language. Sorry, pardon me. Language of Functions and Graphs. And there we go. I assume this maths book from the Shell Centre.
That's it. Yeah, so if you click on that one, that's it. Perfect.
Excellent. Oh, there you go.
So that's the 348-page document, I think, but it's yeah, that's what it looks like on the front cover, but you have to download it to be able to actually open it.
Did it not download? Oh, I thought it did.
No,
I've got to sign in. I'll do that.
Yeah, you got to sign in, Tom. But anyway, it's a.
Well, thank you both for the time you've given today, and thank you for the work you're doing to encourage the conceptual understanding. Again, I'm very lucky that I work with new teachers, and it's that same thing all the time that I hear back. I wish I'd taught it this way. I wish I'd thought about it this way. I'd have enjoyed it more. And I know it's about outcomes. I know it's about understanding for our pupils, but I think there's a lot more enjoyment to be had for the way we're approaching it with regards to the NCTM and the 5 big ideas, because there's an understanding. It's not a frustration of trying to remember rules, because rules aren't a lot of fun. And if they say rules are made to be broken, well, in maths, don't we break things all the time to try and refix them? And if I break this, how can I change it? And I think I'm hearing more of that through my involvement from what I've learned. But I would like to reiterate one more time, I'm not an employee of the NCTM. I'm just an advocate of the work because I'm enjoying it. But Carol and Pete, I certainly enjoyed the last hour, 20 minutes or so, whatever it's been. And thank you very much for your time.
Pleasure to be with you, Tom.
Thanks, Tom. Yes, thanks for giving us that opportunity to talk to you and to show our new website.
Lovely.